You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network.
Hi, this is Peter David, and you're listening to the Epic Marvel Podcast. Have a great day.
Hello and welcome to the Epic Marvel Podcast. This is X-Factor, episode 7B, covering a period of X-Factor from 1992. I am your host, Curtis Findley.
And I'm your X-Factor host, Jared Abrahamson.
And Jared, what issues are we going to be talking about today?
We will be talking about X-Factor number 77 through 83, and also the annual number 7.
That's right. So this is the back half of the X-Factor Epic Collection, Volume 7, All New, All Different X-Factor. We started that in the last episode, covered the genesis of this brand new team of mutants, and followed their adventures, especially with the Hulk crossover. And now we're going to go in a little bit of a different direction and talk about the last issues that are in this book here. This is all of the stuff leading up to the multi-title crossover called X-Cutioner's Song. So just before we start, I want to make a little correction. Last time I was kind of giving a rundown of the history of X-Factor, and I was talking about the original team with like Cyclops and Marvel Girl, Iceman, all of them. And I said that they were a government-funded group. They were, and then you corrected me saying, that they were posing as mutant hunters. But yeah, I just want to make that clear that they were not the government-funded group. The government-funded group was Freedom Force.
Right.
That was the one that Val Cooper was heading up. And just before this book, this epic collection starts, Freedom Force disbands, and X-Factor, this team right here, takes Freedom Force's place as the government-funded group of mutants. So that,
right.
Yeah, in case I can't remember if I made myself that clear last time or, if people were confused about that, but just thought I'd throw that out there. Especially because we meet some of the Freedom Force characters in this book, and so they have a little bit of a, there's a little connection there that needs to be explained, I think.
Yeah. Freedom Force, like their last mission is in the annual number 6 of X-Factor. I mean, but it's like multi-part, and it splits across the 3 different annual, like New Mutants and the X-Men annual that year.
Right. What that one is called, Kings of Pain. Is that the one?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but the Freedom Force story is like a backup, but it's still split across all 3 of those.
We get a little bit of hints of X-Cutioner's Song kind of starting in this volume. Like we meet some of the major players that are going to be pulling the strings in X-Cutioner's Song, and I didn't realize, because I've never read these issues leading up to it, I didn't realize how much of a lead-in we get. Like several issues before the story actually starts, they're starting to lay the seeds of what's gonna happen here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little more than you would think.
Well, I didn't realize that X-Factor played such a big role. I kind of it's definitely an X-Men story. It's definitely an X-Force story, and I figured they just kind of threw in X-Factor because they were the other X book at the time. But yeah, there's a lot of lead up that has to do with the characters here. So excited to see how that plays out when we get to those issues in the next episode. Okay, so I have some listener comments. I know we did some listener comments last time, but this is a pretty popular book, and so I've had some people comment since the last time we recorded our episode. So I'm going to read off some comments here. These are from Facebook. Eric says, I started reading X-Men because of the cartoon and because of Jim Lee, but I stayed because of X-Factor. Issue 71 just happened to be the first issue of X-Factor I ever read. Despite not knowing any of the characters previously, I loved them all immediately. I felt sorry for Rain, Polaris was striking, Alex had the coolest powers, Strong Guy was hilarious, and Madrox was annoyingly lovable. I was also enamored with Stroman, Quesada, and Jay Lee's art. Their versions of the 90s art style seem to be a bit more stylized and unique than their brethren. Of course, Peter David's writing brought it all together. Even though I had no prior knowledge of these characters or their situations, I was able to connect quickly to them and understand what was going on. This run cemented my lifelong love of comics.
Yeah.
Yep. I like his comment though about the artwork because it is quite a bit more stylized. All of those people that he listed off there, Stroman, Quesada, and Jay Lee, very stylized artists, all of them, and they're kind of tucked in this little corner of X Factor, which is like the odd duck in the X books at the time.
Right.
Over on Instagram, Thumbs Up 1981 says, I was pleasantly surprised when I started reading to follow Havoc and Polaris and ended up liking the entire team. I feel that this is some of the best character growth in the early 90s comics. Characters who were previously side characters were given full, robust personalities. It's a great example of why I love comics long-form storytelling. Also, the long gag GCs is hilarious. Yeah, we'll talk about the GCs. I think it's a gag that gets played out pretty quick, and I'm sure we'll bring it up in the conversation a little bit.
Yeah.
One last comment here. Tommy Loves Stuff over on Twitter says, great read. Peter David takes a bunch of B and C level popular mutants and makes them a team you want to read each month. Takes a snob like Quicksilver and, in one therapy-centric issue, makes him somewhat relatable. And also, Multiple Man is a personal favorite.
Yeah.
Okay, basic comments. Thank you very much for taking the time to let us know what you think. And keep an eye out for all of our social media when I ask for the next round of comments, because I'm always interested to hear what you out there think of the stuff that we're reading. Okay, onward and upward, we are going to go into our issues here. We're going to start with X Factor number 77. This one is called Great Expectations. That's a X pun that I think is used so many times. There's probably many different titles. But this issue is very interesting. It raises a very interesting topic indeed. So there's a doctor who has figured out a way to isolate the X gene while the baby is still in utero in order to let the parents know ahead of time before the birth whether or not there's potential that their child is going to be a mutant. It's not a 100% sure test, but it's good enough that people seem to want to know. And then the nasty boys are tasked with the mission to kill this doctor so that nobody's going to abort any mutant babies.
Yeah, not the nasty boys. It's the Mutant Liberation Force.
Right. Yes, it's the Mutant Liberation Force, but the nasty boys are also in this issue.
Right. Well, they're they were captured back in issue 75, and the Mutant Liberation Force break into their prison and set them free.
Yeah, the Mutant Liberation Front. Yeah, there's a lot of characters at play here. So the Mutant Liberation Front is headed up by Stryfe, a character who is kind of brand new to the scene here, and then the Nasty Boys are headed up by this mysterious Mr. S.
Right.
And so everybody, and then there's X Factor as well. So everybody kind of fights. There's a big fight scene. But that's not the most important part about this issue. I think that the really interesting thing about this story here is right at the very beginning, the very first page, where a couple who's expecting go to this doctor in order to find out if their baby has the potential to be a mutant. And the doctor says, yes, there is potential. The test came back positive. And they are really considering whether or not they should abort their baby. And man, we talk about comics being political, right? This is a hot button topic, abortion. And it's, where do you stand on this? Like, should parents be informed? And this is an allegory, right? It's an allegory for, like, what if your child has Down syndrome or fetal alcohol syndrome or something like that, and you know ahead of time that this baby has the potential to be different? And you don't want to deal with that. Is aborting the baby okay? Should parents have the choice? And like, there's, both sides of the argument are represented in this issue here. Of course, X Factor and all of the mutants here feel strongly about not aborting the baby because it's a mutant, because of course they are mutants and they see their mutations as gifts and something that should be celebrated, whereas humans don't see it that way. So yeah, very interesting commentary. And it's, I don't know, hard to wrap your mind around it.
Yeah.
Every situation kind of needs to be taken into account. Every pregnancy is different, and there's different circumstances regarding each one of them. I mean, the fact that in this comic here, we don't even know what the mutant ability would be. Like, it could be as hidden as, Havoc can lead a totally normal life, looking completely normal, and his power set is under control. The thing that really, I think, drives the point home here is that we have the conversation with the couple where they're agonizing over this decision, and then you turn, and the very next page is the ugly mutated face of one of the nasty boys.
Yeah.
What's this guy's name? Hairbag.
Hairbag, yeah.
So it's definitely like that's where their mind goes, is that they're going to have a hideously deformed child, and they don't want to, like, probably for their own sake, they don't want to deal with that.
Right.
Which is maybe not the best reason to abort a child. I don't know. This at the risk of getting too in the weeds with this conversation, it's just I think it's definitely the focus of this issue, and it's something that Peter David is definitely talking about. So I mean, we kind of have to address it in our conversation here. But
right, and also it goes to show you that how comics have always been political. It's not a new thing.
Nope, not at all.
And it was not a new thing in 91, 92 when this came out.
Yeah, well, and it wasn't a new thing even going back to the 60s and before that. There have always been elements of real world situations in comics throughout the years. That's just kind of the way it is. It's always that way.
Yeah.
This issue also has the return of Vic. What's this guy's name? Vic Chocker, Professor Vic Chocker.
Yeah.
And this is his last appearance, actually. So this running gag of this professor who's trying to build the deadliest exoskeleton and failing meets his demise because he goes out and then it starts to rain and his suit isn't sealed properly, so he basically electrocutes himself. It's just bizarre. And then even more bizarre is like Cannonball from X-Force just happens to be zooming by when he sees the statue with the corpse inside it, and he just thinks it's a weird statue. So strange.
Yeah. Oh, it's delightful.
It is delightful. Yeah, it is. It's so funny. And then the story doesn't even stop there, as we'll see a few issues later. Do you want to talk about Cannonball's appearance in this issue?
Yeah, Cannonball shows up basically to get Rain to to join X-Force to come with him, because, they were New Mutants together, but she had run off before X-Force was formed, but she says she's happy where she's at. She doesn't want to leave Alex. Yeah. And also at this time, X-Force are wanted. So Polaris tries to capture him, but then Rain talks her out of it, and then Havoc shows up and also wants to capture him, but he takes off.
And this is where I think a lot of the setting the seeds for X-Cutioner's song kind of start. Mm-hmm. Not only do we see the Mutant Liberation Front in this issue and a little glimpse at Stryfe, but Cannonball's presence here really drives home what X-Factor and X-Men's opinions are on X-Force. Like, they just don't like X-Force. Right. They think they're bad news, of course, because they're wanted, but also like their methods are terrible. And
right, nobody trusts this guy Cable, who seemed to show up out of nowhere.
Yep, exactly.
And Cable has all these big guns, so it's much more violent than X-Men and X-Factor have ever been.
And so I think this really drives home. It's an important issue to have because it shows us also that this is why the New Mutants split up. Not everyone was on board with the path that X-Force was taking, and so that's why Rain left. There are other reasons, but that's kind of one of the reasons as well. Yeah, I really like that. I think this issue it deals with big issues, both real-world issues and also Marvel Universe issues. And it has a lot of great character beats, and it has some fun action scenes as well. But a lot of it's just kind of set up for where we're going, because the excitement's just getting started here.
Right.
Oh, and I love that they try to pull Stryfe through this portal here. Like and they get his glove. Yeah, and that's just funny to me because like Stryfe always appears as this big, huge, menacing figure, right? He just stands looming over everything, but it's like the comedy of them trying to pull Stryfe through the portal with the other guys holding onto Strife's legs on the other side, and they're doing this like tug of war back and forth through the portal. It's just very, very funny to me. It works well. It's great comedy, I think, because that's what this book is trying to do is keep it light.
Yeah.
Even when there's conversations about abortion.
Yeah, and I love the Mutant Liberation Front, them talking about, should we just let him go? And then like, no, he'll be mad, he'll kill us. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's also, we got to pull him through before the portal closes and he's cut in half.
right, yeah.
Oh boy, yeah, pretty funny.
Yeah. And Stryfe, is always, I know I've read all the X-Force issues of this era where Stryfe is like more of a major part, but he seemed to just, stand there and look cool. He didn't really do much, if I remember correctly. But
yeah, well, at this point, he is a very, very mysterious character, right? Like, he's just kind of popped up on the scene. Nobody knows anything about him, and I wonder if even Peter David didn't really know anything about him, but he... whoever, Bob Harris, in their meetings about what's coming up in the X books down the road, they're like, oh yeah, Strife's going to be a big player in this crossover that all of you are a part of, so maybe drop some hints that this is coming up in your book. And Peter David's like, I don't know anything about Stryfe, so I'll just have him standing in the corner there, which could also be why he used that character in comedy, like pulling through the portal, because maybe if he had a better grasp on who the character is, he would be like, no, this doesn't work for Stryfe. We can do a tug of war with any other character here, any of the Nasty Boys or the Mutant Liberation Front, but Strife's kind of the guy that shouldn't have happened to, I think.
Yeah.
It was still funny though. Okay, moving on?
Yep, moving on. Issue 78, titled Playing with Fire. Well, we sort of covered about what this issue is about, talking about the previous one, but this is specifically where the Mutant Liberation Front is going to kill that doctor.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So, yeah. Yeah, I kind of stepped on your toes, when I was talking about the last one, because they weren't at the point when they were going to kill the doctor in the last issue. That's this issue for sure.
Yeah. And they do end up killing the doctor, and all the bad guys getting away free, but...
This is an interesting point for Rain as well. She's been going through sort of a transformation of her character ever since what was happening in the Middle East when she killed the person because her rage just took over. And so at this point, she needs to make a decision. Does she save the doctor who is going to be responsible for killing many unborn mutants? Or is she going to, do what her government boss tells her to do and save the person? And she struggles with that idea. And in the end, she lets the guy die by not getting involved. Oh, no, she does. Sorry, she that's not exactly true. She comes across him and he's already dead. But then she has to make the decision of whether or not she takes all of the research and takes that to the government so the research can be continued, and she decides to destroy the computer and destroy the research.
Right.
Yeah. So, another heavy topic, and it's interesting how Peter David continuously balances his humor with these heavy situations, because there are some funny moments in here as well, especially with Strong Guy. He seems to definitely be the most of the comic relief out of everybody, but everyone seems to have their little quips and funny things that they say.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. In between Rain finding the doctor and him dying, but him saying like, oh, the computer, they need my research, you take my research to the government or whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's the panel of her just staring at the computer. But then the next page is the Mutant Liberation Front escaping and the porthole closing on one dude's leg, and his leg gets cut off.
Yeah, and Multiple Man has a great one-liner at the end there. I knew we wanted to dismantle the MLF, but there has to be a more efficient way than piecemeal. Yeah, great comment. And that's what I mean by balancing, because he keeps the tension light through scenes like that. He keeps things from getting too heavy, even though we're talking about heavy things.
Mm-hmm.
This issue also is half penciled by Stroman and half penciled by Brandon Peterson. And I think that this is kind of the beginning of the end for Larry Stroman, who seems to be slowly coming off of this book. I say slow
Yeah.
because it's going to take a few issues before he's totally gone, but
Right.
he only does half an issue here.
But I think he does do the final page.
Yep, he does
Yeah.
the final page. Yeah, he kind of does first half, and then it gets handed over around, let me see here, what page is this? Once there's a big splash page with the Mutant Liberation Front, and I think that's Brendan Peterson, and then moving forward, those pages. Well, actually, maybe it's just a couple of pages that's Brendan Peterson. 1, 2. Yeah, actually, it might just be maybe the last 6 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Because that picture, yeah, Strong Guy. So page 267, when Polaris throws... What's the woman with the helmet? I can't remember her name.
Yeah.
I can't remember. There's so many. Okay, that's one thing I want.
Tempo?
What? Tempo. Yeah, that's right.
Tempo, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing I was going to bring up at some point in this episode, is that there are so many just like not no name, but D-level characters that just show up and no one remembers them. There's so many. Because there's the Nasty Boys. There's this group here, the Mutant Liberation Front, and then we're going to meet like the female assassins or whatever they are at the later on.
Right.
There's 7 of them, and also the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. I know those ones are a little bit more well known, but it's like all of these really lame characters show up in X Factor. So strange.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. Sorry, I was saying when Polaris throws Tempo into a tree, I think that's the first Brendan Peterson page actually, and then the next 4 or 5 pages are all his, and then Stroman does the last page.
I think that's right.
Okay, next in this epic collection, we have X Factor Annual, and there are 3 stories in here. We'll tackle all of them one at a time. The first one is called Shattershot Part 3, The Historians of Tales to Come. Written by Fabian Nicieza and penciled by Joe Quesada, with inks by Joe Rubenstein. So Joe Quesada is someone who's going to be taking over the art chores on this book in a little while. So this is kind of like his test to see if he can do it, maybe, or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Or if when the job came open, they're just like, oh, he did a good job on the annual, you should get him.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. That could be the case, and he does. You can see it's his signature style, and it's exciting, and it's not actually a far departure from Stroman. It's a little bit more classic and not as stylized, but it's still different enough that I wouldn't call it a standard Marvel artist.
Right.
I feel like, especially in this first splash page with Mojo, that he's kind of in the Todd McFarlane school of composition and detail and such, but not as flashy as Todd McFarlane is, but trying to be.
Okay. Yeah.
Something like that.
I see it.
So this is an interesting story because this is part 3 of an annual crossover that crosses over all of the X titles at the time. But it's also just kind of a standalone story. It has characters that have a theme that kind of go through the annuals, but the story gets passed off in a way that we don't have to have read the previous parts to this, and we don't have to even read the conclusion. As far as X Factor is concerned, the entire X Factor story is contained within this annual.
Yeah.
And the tale is this. It's a story about Mojo sending Spiral to take care of this character, like to try and kill this character who's going to he's going to give Mojo's TV show bad reviews. Is that what it is here?
Well, yeah, but I mean, also this guy Arise, he sort of had been engineering some of the people in Mojo World. Like he's the reason why Spiral has 6 arms and
Right. Yeah, so Spiral's going to go take him out, and she's angry about all of this because it's kind of ruined her life. It's interesting to me. I admit to not fully caring about this annual because it's part 3, so maybe just skimming through it, which is why I'm missing the nuance of the plot here. But what I did like about it is because Spiral was part of the Freedom Force.
right.
And so they actually have a connection to Val Cooper. And so we get to confront them and kind of bring a little bit of conclusion to their relationship in this issue here. And it is interesting to me to learn about Spiral's history because I don't think I ever really knew where she came from or I think maybe I attributed all of her arms to just the fact that she's a mutant.
Right.
But yeah, very interesting to see that. Interesting to see this Arise character as well. He obviously has some sort of connection to Longshot because he has got 3 fingers and a thumb, just like Longshot does. But we don't really get any conclusion of that. I think that all of that's in the X-Force Annual, which I have not read.
Isn't it in Volume 1?
Man, I don't remember that story at all, and it's probably because I didn't get invested in that either, because it was just the 4th part of the story. I really should read all of them together to see if I can get a good sense of what's going on here.
Yeah.
Anyway, it wasn't a terrible issue to read. I didn't care for it.
No, yeah. Right. I mean, also, I've never really been a big fan of Mojo World.
Yeah.
And that stuff. I don't know. So I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah.
It's fine, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the curse of these annual stories, is if you're not reading all of it, does it make sense? Is it worth reading just the one chapter? I appreciate them trying to make it somewhat self-contained, but yeah, you do feel like the threads that came before that are carrying through this work against it a little bit.
Right. Yeah. And I don't think I've ever, like, I know I have all of these annuals, but I don't think I ever read them.
Oh, well.
Or sat down and read them all. Yeah.
Yeah. High time to do that.
Yeah.
There's some cool pinups in these issues here that by Bill Sienkiewicz. There's one cool one after this first story of Quicksilver, and then there's another one of Strong Guy after the next story, and then I think that's it. Just the 2 pinups. No. There's one pinup at the very end by Steve Lealoha of Havoc and Wolfsbane. So yeah, I like that. I like the inclusion of those. That's kind of fun. Do you want to talk about this second story?
Sure, yeah. It's second story is a lot of fun, called Drowning in Paperwork. And it's basically a Val Cooper story.
Yeah.
Like, she's the government liaison. She has to do all this paperwork, and there's, tons of it on her desk. But has tickets to go to a Motown show that evening. But she gets a phone call from the president, in quotes, telling her that she needs to get all this paperwork done because that's the good thing. But turns out that was just Jamie putting on a voice so he could take the tickets. But anyway, and of course she finds out at the end and ends with him or with her chasing him with scissors. Yeah. But there's a dream sequence. Yeah, it's fun. It's
totally fun. Yeah. The dream sequence is the best part, of course, because that's where the paper comes to life and it's trying to kill her or whatever. And
right,
Derek Robertson is the penciler on this, kind of early, I think, in his career. He doesn't really get more of a feature until he was on Wolverine later, right? But yeah, so he does some really cool stuff with the paper and it coming to life, monsters made out of paper, and it's just a short, 6 or 8 pages or something like that, but it's a fun little ride.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And then the last story in here is called Cal and Guido, and the font is definitely, and the look of Cal is definitely is playing to the Calvin and Hobbes font and the style of his hair and stuff like that. And you even see Hobbes on the splash page on the shirt of one of the guys in the background.
Right.
So this is a story about a little kid who's being bullied and goes to Strong Guy and hires him as his bodyguard. And at first they just want to try and shake down the bad guys and like make them afraid. So they'll leave Cal alone. But I love the little twist here that Cal ends up using that power, using the fact that he knows Strong Guy to bully the bullies. And Strong Guy's like, no, I'm not having any of this. What the heck are you doing? He says, you can't steal their money. You can't be the bully just because, you know me, or don't let the power go to your head. It's a great little story here, and I appreciate Strong Guy's character of wanting to help the kid, but then also, holding the kid accountable for being a good person in the end as well. So yeah, it's just a good, fun, short story that shows us that Strong Guy, even though he's all fun and games, and he laughs a lot and stuff like that, his moral compass is good.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I absolutely love the final Cal's final line, which could be, the final line of a Calvin and Hobbes strip where nobody appreciates men of vision.
Totally. Yes. It's very in line with what Calvin would say. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also worth noting that this issue is drawn by Joe Madureira.
hmm
This has got to be pretty early in his career as well, because we're quite a ways from Age of Apocalypse still at this point. But here he
Right.
is doing a little backup for an annual, and his style is pretty different. I think it reminds me of man, who's the guy that does? Is it? I think it's the Pit that I'm thinking of. Dale, is that Dale Keown that goes and does the Pit? Anyway, the way that he draws the kid in this with the huge eyes and the huge ears reminds me of some kid in an Image book that came out in the 90s, and I think it might be Pitt. I should actually
Okay.
look it up and find out for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good. He does a good job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's it for our annual. It has the crossover story, which is mediocre, and a couple of fun backups, but the whole thing is maybe not much to write home about. It's fun for a little diversion, but I'm far more interested, of course, in the actual book and what's happening there.
Right. This issue number 79, titled Rhapsody in Blue. Well, basically the meat of this issue is Multiple Man and Quicksilver getting sent on a mission to investigate a female mutant who may or may not have killed some guy. So they're tracking her down. And by the end of the issue, it is unclear whether or not she is guilty of murder or not.
Right.
Yeah. But also, during the course of the issue, Polaris is like out shopping and she gets sucker punched by a guy with a metal hand who we don't see.
Yeah, that's going to play out big time in the coming issues here. This issue is drawn by Jim Fern, and let me tell you, it is not great. It does seem
Yeah.
quite more amateur than what we have come to expect from this title with Strowman on. I'm not sure what happened to Larry, but he's gone this month. He couldn't finish last month, and he's gone this month. Maybe he was sick or on vacation or something, but we have a fill-in artist, and it doesn't... Man, it's just not great.
Yeah.
But I do like the concept here of trying to come to the defense of this mutant who is just a music teacher. Peter David is doing a lot in this book to show the different types of prejudice that mutants are facing. From, especially, we just talked a lot about abortion simply because they're mutants. So this woman, when her powers manifested, they call her a late bloomer because she was in her 20s when her mutant powers showed herself. It turned her skin blue. And the parents complained. The teachers fired her just because her skin was blue.
Right.
And that's not right. It doesn't matter that she was, good at her job or whatever. And through this issue, we find out also that her power is to alter people's emotional state when she plays music. And all she wants to do is make people happy. And so she tries to show that to Jamie, to Multiple Man. And he is entered into this kind of dreamlike state where, they make love in a field or something. And just to show him what she is capable of, how she's capable of making people happy. And that's going to come into play because they sort of start a little relationship here. But the woman in question gets arrested, and we don't get the conclusion to this story here because they have to move on to a new mission. But I mentioned that I like that Peter David is dealing with these mutant issues, but I also like that they're kind of like jumping from case to case quite rapidly. It's like we just got off of the other case, and we're being thrown into this one. In fact, we're still wrapping up at the beginning of this issue the fallout with the, tampering with the computer that had the research on it.
Right.
And now we're jumping right into this case. And even before this case is finished, we have another case that's come up where they have to protect a mutant who is supposed to be testifying against a German drug cartel. So it's like the team has to juggle a whole bunch of things all at once. And none of them have to do with any big, huge, scary mutants like Magneto or Apocalypse. It's all small cases that they're dealing with. I think that's kind of cool. It's just a refreshing change from the big end-of-the-world X-Men situations that we get in the other books.
Yeah.
And I guess you could say that that's kind of always been the case with X-Factor, because if you think about what X-Factor was doing when it first started with issue number 1, when Cyclops and the gang were posing as mutant hunters, they were tackling those small cases as well.
Right.
It just so happened that Apocalypse entered the scene pretty quick.
Yeah, right. and eventually they're like flying to different going to different planets and
Yep.
stuff.
And then it's
too,
like an
so
X-Men book. So this is kind of bringing it back to the core of what X Factor kind of was trying to do way back in the 80s.
right.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and I think it kind of fits with the the premise of this being a government team that maybe the big end of the world stuff isn't always going on, but they're um, a mutant who may have killed somebody in Maine. Like, hey, let's go investigate that. That seems because I it sort of feels like maybe this is the mutant equivalent of the FBI
Yeah, yeah,
in a
for
way.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like that, and that they're not tied down to one city or anything. They kind of get sent to wherever the problem is. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, a lot of their stuff does take place in small towns and, not New York, not Times Square.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm glad that Peter David is a strong writer because with the artwork being what it is, if we even had a mediocre writer, I wouldn't have been interested in this issue at all because the art is not engaging. But because the themes are strong and the jokes are still there and the dialogue is interesting, it's still an enjoyable read.
Yeah.
And with that, we can go over to X Factor number 80. And the title of this one doesn't come up until a couple pages in here. It's called Bells and Whistles. I really like this opening. It fits with
Yeah.
how fun Peter David likes to be. We are introduced to Rain's World, which a sign of the times.
Right.
Wayne's World, the movie, was very popular at the time,
Yep.
and so we're seeing it here. The pop culture references
Yeah.
as Rain has a dream sequence that she's in. She has a show called Rain's World, and her partner in it is Alex, and they have a special guest, Polaris. And then the Brood comes through the window and attacks, and she wakes up. So
Yeah.
I just did an episode about New Mutants, the Demon Bear Saga epic
Uh-huh.
collection, and one of the issues in the last half begins with a dream sequence like this, where Rain is in a fairy tale kind of world. It's playing off of the Disney movie Sleeping Beauty, and it starts off really nice. It's a magical world, and she's having a good time, and then the dream turns into a nightmare where like things are coming to life and trying to eat her. It plays out very similar
Right.
to this dream here, so I'm sure that this is a callback to that classic issue that came
Yeah.
like several years before. It was by Chris Claremont.
Yeah.
So I like that. I think that's a nice thing to show that Rain it's still part of her character to have these types of dreams and be very playful
Right.
in that sense, but then also being scared and having some inner demons.
And I also have to say that this issue is how I realized how to pronounce rain.
Oh yeah,
But before reading it, I was always thinking like Ronnie or something like
right.
that.
But then Rain's
Yeah,
World, of course.
Rain's World. Yeah, like okay, there it is. That
There
makes
it is.
sense.
That does make
So
sense. That's funny. In the credits, it says
yeah,
that the Rain's World idea, the gag, was suggested by Myra David, and I'm assuming that is Peter David's daughter, or is it his wife? I can't remember.
I think it's his daughter.
I think so too. I can't
Yeah.
remember what his wife's name is, but yeah. Okay, so this issue, we see Polaris in the hospital. Her jaw was hit so bad that it has to be wired shut in order for it to heal. So that's a pretty big whack that she took there. Larry Stroman is back on artwork, so we get him doing his thing here, and he does some really cool panel layouts and poses and such. So I'm glad that maybe he just needed that extra time to regroup and come back full form because he does that. This issue deals with a couple of different things. One of them is Quicksilver and Jamie dealing with Rhapsody, this blue woman who can control people's emotions through music, or in fact, even kind of take control of them through music.
Yeah.
And then the other half is the rest of the team in a safe house protecting this woman whose mutant name is Shrew. And because they know that the rest of her gang, the Hell's Bells, are going to try to kill her so that she isn't a snitch. And then by the end of the by the end of the issue, we find out that the Hell's Bells are being led by none other than Cyber. Cyber, who is a fairly new character still in the Marvel Universe, to the point where X Factor has never heard of him before.
Right.
Yeah, his is the big steel arm, the big steel hand that we
Right.
saw knock out Polaris in the previous issue.
Yeah, the end of this issue has Cyber poisoning Strong Guy.
Right. Yeah, that's going to play up big in the next couple of issues here. What do you think of all these characters? Hell's Bells.
They're, I don't know. I feel like they're sort of the least interesting mutant foes that we've gotten so far.
Yeah.
Even compared to the Nasty Boys and the Mutant Liberation Front, they're all women, which I guess is novel, but
Yeah.
I don't know. They're not interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't make really a big point of distinguishing their characters or anything like that. They all have, their power set and just kind of do their thing. Yeah, they're just about as interesting as the Nasty Boys or the Mutant Liberation Front, which is not that interesting.
Yeah.
But this is what I was talking about. Like, there's just so many characters, just D-list characters that we never see again in this book. I mean, I don't know if we never see them again, but they certainly don't make a splash, that's for sure.
Yeah, I actually looked it up that these Hell's Bells, they appeared, in these couple 2 or 3 issues, and then they didn't appear again until this past year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, somebody brought him back in one of the X books.
Wow, okay. There you go.
I have no idea what they did because I haven't read it, but
Amazing. Well,
yeah, right.
Oh boy, I can't even imagine. Like, quick, we got to find some characters that we haven't seen in a long time. How would you even remember that these ones exist? They must have just read this epic collection recently.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see what happens to Hell's Bells in the next issue.
Yeah. Well, not much. I mean, they fight and then they lose. But I guess the big thing is Strong Guy sort of freaking out that he's been poisoned and he doesn't want to die. It was part of Cyber's plan to poison this guy and tell him like, okay, give up the shrew who they've been guarding, give her up so you can get the antidote.
Yeah.
I think the best scene of the issue is where Havoc appears to drink the poison, so he and Strong Guy are in the same boat.
Totally. That was definitely the most interesting part for me too. I think Peter David's strengths definitely lie in these conversations. Like, sure, he can he does some nice plots and his dialogue, his comedy is fine, but when we get into these hard topics, he seems to pull one out in each issue, it seems. And in this issue, it's Strong Guy wrestling with the fact that he doesn't want to die. And it's like, why is her life worth more than me? She's a bad person and I'm a good person. Why aren't you doing more things to help me? And he's not thinking of trying to come up with solutions that work out both ways, but he's like, come on, people, aren't you on my side? And it's a good question, and they wrestle with that. And it's like, well, should we hand her over, or what's our responsibility? Who do we answer to? And and also he doesn't want to take the antidote because it is untested. He doesn't want to be the guinea pig. Like, what if that makes his problem worse? What if it kills him right then and there?
Yeah, it
would make more sense to get rid of Shrew and get the actual antidote from Cyber. And that doesn't even say like, does Cyber actually have an antidote, or is it actually an antidote, or all of this kind of stuff wrestles with some good questions. But I like Alex's leadership here because we haven't really seen Alex be a great leader in terms of like talking people down off the ledge like he is here. So this is the first time I think we've seen him really step up and do more than just command action. He's actually taking the steps that a leader should take to gain the trust of the people who are looking up to him. Very nice. Yeah. Nicely done.
And also, since Strong Guy got his name, like every time it's brought up, Alex says like, oh, that's such a stupid name.
Yeah.
Until this issue, where this is the first issue, he just drank the poison and he's going to take the antidote, but he hands it to him after you, Strong Guy.
Right. Yeah, I didn't notice that, but you're right. Like, treating his name with respect in that conversation at that moment is a very important thing to do. So very cool. Yeah, nice.
Right.
Ah, man, and another plot here that starts up, a boat comes into a dock and it's carrying refugees from Genosha, which Genosha had a huge political upheaval in the in the Extinction Agenda, which just happened a few issues back. Not in X Factor. Well, yeah, it was part of X Factor.
Yeah, it was part of X.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, so these refugees are coming, but then the American government is saying you have no paperwork, you have no visas, you can't be here. You have to turn around and go back where you came from. But they're like, "Are you kidding? We're not going back to Genosha. It's terrible there." But they're like, no, we fixed the problem. Honest, we fixed the problem. Everything's good there. Very interesting take on refugees and what do you do with them. And of course, because the refugees are mutants, the X Factor is going, well, I guess they don't step in till the next issue. So maybe we can just move on to the next issue. Do you have anything more you want to say about this one?
Well, we should probably say that this issue wraps up the Rhapsody storyline.
Oh, yeah, right, of course.
That she did, in fact, kill the guy. Didn't intend to, but she was using her mutant power to, affect him, and he ended up dying from it.
Because this was the guy who was leading the charge to fire her from the school board. And so she wanted to show this guy that her powers were actually good. So she wanted to make him, give him a euphoric state to show him how happy he can feel. But he felt so happy that his heart stopped and he died. So unexpected consequences.
Yeah.
But yeah, she actually did do it and now has to face time. And Jamie was the one who realized that. So good moment for Jamie as well, because he can overcome the trance that Rhapsody had on him in order to see the real picture here. But yeah, unfortunate for Rhapsody because she honestly didn't want that to happen. But you call that manslaughter, I guess, right?
Right. And also, rereading the storyline, it sort of reminded me of, 15 years later or whatever it is, when it's the X Factor investigations with Jamie solving crimes as a private eye.
Right.
And it almost feels this is sort of the start of that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So is this the last Strowman issue?
This is the final Strowman issue.
Yeah. He goes out with a bang with a nice fight scene and such. Sad to see him go. That's a very short run for him. And because we got the fill-in issues and such, I just wonder if he couldn't keep up the schedule or what exactly was going on here. But sad to see him go.
Yeah.
For this team that he helped define right at the beginning.
Yeah. I know he went on to do an Image book, right about this time. I don't recall what book it was, but...
That would make sense then, because this is the exodus of the Image crew is happening right around this time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, he's moving over to greener pastures, or so it seems. I hope he had success. I'll have to look it up to see what he did. Okay, so next issue here, issue number 82, we get an issue from, who's the artist here? It's Ririk Tyler, a name that I just don't know at all. He's not bad, definitely more amateur than we are used to. Again, it's mediocre. Again, it's not great, but it's not terrible either. We actually, in the last episode, we wrapped up the whole plot with the Hell's Bells as well.
Right.
So Shrew is safe. She is she's going to testify, and everything worked out. And Strong Guy's like, oh yeah, I guess I should have trusted you guys after all. He learned his lesson. So in this one, at the very beginning of this issue, we get Multiple Man being reamed out by Val over what happened with Rhapsody. That he was kind of taking matters into his own hands and harassing the people who were holding her, and he shouldn't have done that. And Alex steps in and says, that's enough. If you have a problem with my subordinates, you need to take it up with me, since I'm their leader. Which, again, here's another instance of Alex being a good leader and doing more than just being a field leader. He's actually going to bat for his team. So I like that. I like to see that come out a little bit more. Gives him a little bit better of a story arc if he's growing in that role. But this issue is called "Sitting on the Dock of the Bay" or "Sitting by the Dock of the Bay." There's actually a lot of music titles in this book.
Yeah.
Sitting by the Dock of the Bay. This issue deals with the refugees who are on this ship at the dock, not allowed off of their boat. And the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants are the only ones who are willing to help them out. And I love it. It's like their response is, well, why would we want help from a group that has the word evil in their names? And Toad's just like, no, 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 that's sarcastic. It's supposed to like, be ironic or whatever. But
Right.
um,
Sure it is.
yep, yep. And they're partnered with Sauron, which is an odd combination. Sauron, who was just in the pages of X-Force not too long ago, but he's here for some reason. Not sure why. And of course, the Blob and Pyro, who is part of Freedom Force as well. He's here again. So another tie to Freedom Force. They've all kind of gone back to where they were before. And what I really like about this is that there's a confrontation between Toad and Quicksilver. And Quicksilver and Toad are both founding members of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants way back in X-Men #4, way back in the 60s. Yeah. And so to see them kind of back together again and show especially Quicksilver's progression as a character, very nice to see. I like that scene a lot.
Yeah.
Polaris is back, and I don't know, this issue is just kind of one big fight with the evil mutants, and it just kind of is setting the stage for X-Factor to be more involved in dealing with these refugees.
Another scene worth talking about is with Rain fighting Sauron, and Sauron mentions that he killed Sam Cannonball.
Right.
Rain kind of loses control again.
Yeah, I like how she's trying to keep it a secret from all of her team as well. She doesn't really want any of them to know that she's losing control or that bad things are happening. So it's interesting to watch her character and the development of her arc here. Okay, you want to go on to the last issue?
Yeah, issue number 83, final issue in this book, called Painting the Town. Oh, just Painting the Town.
Painting the Town, yeah.
Pencils by Mark Pacella.
Yep.
Who I think is better than the previous couple fill-ins that we've had.
Yes, he is better. He's kind of he's a little bit of a Rob Liefeld clone.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of Rob Liefeld vibes off of his art. And then Al Milgrom has been the consistent inker of all of these guys, including Stroman, through all of these issues. Yeah. So there's it doesn't provide any consistency, unfortunately, but he's still there.
Right. And so this issue, X-Factor, they take the mutant refugees who are have been called the X-Patriots. They take them around the town just to see what it's like. I mean, to get a taste of America while it's decided that they will actually have to go back to Genosha.
Right.
And this is a more character-focused issue than some of the previous ones. There's not really big fights. Yeah, but it's sort of vignettes of each of the members with different refugees.
Yeah, I actually liked that. I thought it was kind of nice. Again, Peter David is great at bringing out those character moments, so to have a whole issue of that is really nice. And then we also get just learning more about the refugee situation. And they fled when stuff was going down in Genosha, and they haven't been back since. And so they don't know, they're not going to take the word of the American people, that the American government, that the situation has been resolved. They're sticking to their guns. I'm wondering if this issue was even kind of on the schedule. It might have been a last-minute edition. I wonder if X-Cutioner's song had to be delayed by a month or something like that. Because the next issue blurb in the previous issue says, next, X-Patriots, Exiles, and X-Force. There's no X-Force in this next issue here, in issue 83. Yeah. That next issue blurb makes me think that X-Cutioner's song was supposed to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was going to be delayed, so they had to put one more issue of X-Factor in here. So we have this fill-in issue where nothing major happens. They just have to, like, if you remove this issue completely and just start X-Cutioner's song, it would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're supposed to be going to Genosha. They're supposed to be heading there. So it's like we have to have a whole issue of them getting ready to head there.
Well, and they don't actually get to Genosha till well after X-Cutioner's song.
Yeah. We do get I guess the one thing that that does happen is the cliffhanger in this one, where the the one of the refugees is met, and here's some more political stuff for you, is met by the people in, I don't know where they are, in like Central Park or something like that, and they beat him with a baseball bat, and I don't know, it seems like he's probably going to die, but that's definitely probably an allusion to a lot of the gay bashing that was happening in the early 90s, you know, when homosexuality was, when coming out of the closet was becoming more of a natural thing. It was, you know, this was the era of the AIDS epidemic and such, a more commonplace thing. So yeah, I think that we're dealing with another kind of rip from the headline story here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and even Genosha itself was sort of, I think, based on South Africa at the time.
Yeah, with the apartheid for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. You know, and you know, the political nature of refugees trying to enter the country, which is, you know, still
a hot button topic for sure.
Yeah,
it's actually quite amazing how political this run is. I didn't realize that going in here, but Peter David tackles like every big issue you could think of.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting. That's kind of all we have for our issues today. Is there anything else you wanted to say about this issue here? Oh, we do have to address number one fan.
Yeah, that one of the most ridiculous comics pages of all time.
Yes,
I think.
I think so too.
Yeah, the number one fan. He's giving a villain's monologue speech where he's revealed as he's the younger brother of Vic Chocker, who, you know, tried to make that overpowered suit and died a few issues ago.
This guy's name is Rick Chocker.
It's Rick Chocker, yeah. The number one fan, and it's revealed that he replaced his hands with giant fan blades.
Razor sharp fan blades.
Razor sharp, yeah. But then he realizes he can't open the door because he doesn't have hands anymore. And since he made his lair impenetrable, he slaps his head, and, you know, a little box that says, "Oh, well, since he changed his hands to razor sharp blades, it ended up killing him." That's
so funny. Yeah. He slaps his head out of frustration and ends up dying. Oh, man. I love the storyline, and it must be building to something, right? Like, do you know what this is building to?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good. I don't know at all, and I'm like, oh, man, I can't wait to see where this is going. This is going to be just fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, I have to wait till the next epic.
Yeah. Okay, well, there we go. That's our episode. There's some bonus features in the back here, some sketches from Stroman, concept art, variant covers, and collection covers. And, of course, because this is the early 90s, we have selections from the Marvel swimsuit special. One of Polaris and two of Val Cooper. Apparently, she's popular enough to have two pinups in the swimsuit issue.
Right.
But there you go. And then there's something new and exclusive to the Epic Collection here. We have an afterword from Ralph Macchio talking about how much he loves this era of X Factor. There's no any like real interesting revealing information, though I do like his comment here saying that his perception of Larry Stroman's art style is that it contains elements of two pencilers who preceded him on this series, Whilce Portacio and Walt Simonson. And I think that's actually a good description of Larry Stroman, a combination of Whilce Portacio and Walter Simonson. Very interesting. I like that.
Yeah. I really like those afterwards when they show up in these books.
Yeah. Ralph Macchio seems to do he did quite a few of them at a time. I haven't seen him do any in any of the recent releases, so I don't know if he stopped doing them or what. But yeah. You get him. And there we have it. That's our episode. The next volume, the next X Factor volume, Epic Collection, has the first few issues of the X-Cutioner song storyline. It doesn't include all of the parts. It only includes the X Factor chapters. So what I suggested we do next, and we'll do this next week, is move over to X-Force Volume 2, which does have the entire X-Cutioner song storyline included in it. So I'm going to invite Jared back along with two other people, because this is a crossover storyline. We'll have a crossover co-host episode as well. So we'll have a few people represented, and we will tackle the X-Cutioner song storyline in the next episode. So
sounds good.
Yeah, I think that should be fun. Thanks, Jared, again for hanging out with me and talking comics, talking X Factor. Had a good time here.
Yeah, anytime.
And I hope all of you listeners had a good time as well. And you can check us out on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, and on YouTube. And if you search for Epic Collections on Facebook, you can find my special Epic Collection Facebook group. And we will be talking about all the new Epic Collections that are announced. But that's all we have for today. Thanks, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Have a good one.